So one of the things that we do with our clients is we work on an activity called pelvic floor visualization. And to be honest with you, this is a huge mismark in traditional rehab, and definitely the exercises that you might be finding on YouTube or cheap apps, those types of things where you're just going straight to the exercises. We find that women specifically, we're talking and working with pregnant women, postpartum women after they've had their baby. We often find that they are so disconnected from their pelvic floor, right? They are so disconnected from where their pelvic floor is even located, how to contract it, how to relax it, how to connect to it spatially, somatically, energetically, that oftentimes we also find that moms kind of totally want to disown this part of their body, especially if there's shame around this area, especially if there's pain or dysfunction like leakage or pelvic heaviness. Oftentimes, women carry a lot of trauma in this area as well. And so one of the exercises that we really love to get started with our clients is a pelvic floor visualization activity. So if you're not here on YouTube watching and you're listening in on the podcast here, this might be an episode that you want to go over and tune in to our YouTube channel. It's Jessica London, but you absolutely will still get so much benefit out of this, even if you're just listening, driving, walking the kids to the park, that type of thing. So I'm going to take you through a pelvic floor visualization activity here, which is going to start to integrate the process for you to start getting connected to your pelvic floor, right? It is forming the brain to nerve to muscle connection. And when I say it's often missed, and this is typically because women or moms will just go straight to exercises, straight to kegels. Well, they're probably doing the kegels wrong if they don't even know if they're connected. They don't even know if they're somatically or spatially connected to that area, right? This is why so many women and moms do kegels incorrectly. Maybe you just go straight to bridges or core exercises without even first energetically, spatially, somatically connecting to your pelvic floor. So in our method that we use with our clients online, we call this the mind-body connection, but it's actually where we start is pelvic floor visualization. So I have my handy dandy pelvis here. If you're here with me on video, we'll be going over the different sections of the pelvic floor and every piece to it that it might be located and how you can connect to different parts of the pelvic floor as also part of your training with us. So one person that might be experiencing leakage might need to connect more to the front part of their pelvic floor versus someone who might be, dealing with pain with intimacy is more of the middle, or, pain with tailbone pain or hip pain. Maybe they need to connect more to the back part of their pelvic floor. So I like to break down the pelvic floor in sections so that not only are you connecting to the pelvic floor as a whole, but you're also learning to contract, relax, and connect to your pelvic floor in different sections of the pelvic floor as well. So first and foremost, when we're thinking about the pelvic floor, if you're sitting down with me, you can go ahead and rock side to side here, and you should feel these two sit bones, right? These two bones on the bottom of your pelvis. This is where the pelvic floor is in between these two sit bones. You should also be able to feel the front part of your pelvis. This is your pubic bone. And if you go just beyond down to the pubic bone, you'll also start to feel the front part of your labia and your urethra, and then eventually your vaginal opening. If you go all the way to the back of the pelvis, you'll feel your tailbone, right? So you can take your hand and find your pubic bone and find your tailbone, find those two sit bones. Those are the four corners of like a diamond, right? So if we think about the pelvic floor like a diamond, there's 4 points: the coccyx, the tailbone, the front part of the pubic bone, and the sit bones. And the pelvic floor spans that entire area. So if we're thinking about it like a diamond, the very first thing that I want you to think about is not only contracting, because that's what everybody wants to talk about, and majority of people actually don't need more of, because we tend to live more in tension and in a contracted state versus the reverse. But first, if you just connect to that area, right? Give yourself some time here to see, okay, yeah, I feel my pelvic floor. I know where it's connected now. Okay? Great, perfect. Now that you know where it's connected, I want you to take a breath in. So put your hand, right? Sit on your pelvic floor if you need to, right? Sit on it if you're standing, or maybe you just kind of somatically, spatially feel that pelvic floor. And I want you to take a breath in. When you take that breath in, what happens is there is a transfer of pressure, should happen, transfer of pressure coming down into the pelvic bowl. right? This is like a hammock or like a trampoline. It's very buoyant, the pelvic floor. As you take that breath in, it should respond by passively lengthening. So if you are sitting on your hand, right, you should take that breath in and you should gently, passively feel the pelvic floor kind of slightly coming into the pelvic floor. Passively means that you're not actively pushing. It also means you're not actively contracting. This just means like you're at rest. You're taking a breath in. It's passively kind of coming down. You feel the relaxation. You might feel your pelvic floor drop a little bit. And this is also where we've worked with clients one-on-one, and we've done this exercise with them, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's the first time I've actually connected to my pelvic floor. Or they'll say things like, I just felt a drop. It's like, wow, you just felt a drop for the first time because you likely were so contracted and guarded so that you didn't ever connect to that drop or that release work. So start just by breathing normally. We're not going to go into too many contractions first. We're not going to go into too many relaxations first. Just do about 5 to 10 breaths independently. Pause this if you need to. Do 5 to 10 breaths and then come back to me. So once you've come back to me and you've done your 5 to 10 breaths and you've kind of understood now how the pelvic floor operates inversely with your breath and with the transfer of pressure coming down on the breath in and then kind of coming back up on the exhale, this is where we are now restoring optimal range of motion of your pelvic floor. Just this activity alone, you connecting to your pelvic floor, can dramatically increase the optimal function of your pelvic floor to reduce leaks, to reduce pain, your hips, your tailbone, pain with intimacy, just by getting connected to this region and feeling the drop and the release and feeling just that passive recoil that happens after the exhale. Okay? So now we're going to take it one step further. I want you to now focus on the contraction and the relaxation. So for a lot of people, they'll call these kegels or reverse kegels for the relaxation. You can call them whatever you want. I just call them pelvic floor contractions, pelvic floor releases. So this time, when you take your breath in, allow your pelvic floor, just like you did before, to passively lengthen. Let it fully expand. And then on the exhale, you're going to gently pick up the pelvic floor and kind of scoop it in. Think about it kind of zippering up, if you will, from the middle part of the vaginal canal up towards the front. Most people will be really tight in the back part of the pelvic floor here and not have good coordination and connection to the front part of the pelvic floor, right? So this is where we're trying to restore a little bit more of that connection, the coordination in the pelvic floor. So I want you to think about, starting in the middle and gently pulling up, almost like you're going to exhale, like you're blowing through a straw as you're picking up. As you pick up on the exhale, there's also a second component of the relaxation. So exhale, engage, pelvic floor pickup, thinking about the middle portion to the front portion of the pelvic floor, and then let it all drop again. Really see if that you can go even beyond the drop. Can you feel a little bit more of a descent on the pelvic floor with the exhale? So now we're going to focus on contracting and relaxing the pelvic floor. Both of these are really important. So a lot of times people call the pelvic floor contraction a kegel, and they focus so much on the kegels. But oftentimes what we find is too many people are living in a contracted, tense state that they actually need the opposite of that, which is more of like a reverse kegel or relaxation or down training. There's a lot of different names for it. We're going to focus on both now that you've already established optimal range of motion in the pelvic floor just by connecting with your breath, by somatically, spatially connecting to this area. We're focusing on the contraction and the relaxation on this part. So I'm going to have you now take a breath in. And when you take that breath in, just like you did previously, focus on the drop. Allow the passive lengthening to come down. On the exhale, this is where I want you to focus on the pelvic floor pickup or a kegel. So many people will, squeeze their butt cheeks or squeeze their bottom, and then they'll feel the pelvis kind of drop backwards, or they'll do like a tailbone tuck. This is too much of the, glutes coming into play here. So we're just thinking about a gentle contraction, focusing on, if you're seeing the visual here, but focusing on that vaginal canal all the way up to more of the urethra where you pee, towards the front part of your pelvic floor, closer to the pubic bone. So we're thinking about a slow and guided contraction here on the exhale. So let's take a breath in, allow everything to relax. On the exhale, you're going to gently find that pelvic floor pickup towards the center or middle portion where that vaginal canal is, and gently pick up. Hold for 3 and relax all the way again, right? We're not trying to do a bunch of pelvic floor contractions. We want to get full range of motion, especially as you're starting to get engaged with this area, and fully relax. Okay, so now that we know on the exhale, you are to engage the pelvic floor, to contract, to do that lift. On the release, the pelvic floor will drop. So if you want to pause this again and try another 5 to 10, you totally can. Here's where I also liked to have you visually connect and contract into different parts of the pelvic floor. So a lot of times people, one, they don't even know where the pelvic floor is at. And number 2, they don't know which part of the pelvic floor that they're actually connecting to or contracting. So now I want you to focus on just the front part of the pelvic floor. So think about those 2 sit bones, right? Those side-to-side sit bones. Think of like if there was a line, drawn through this area. Now you're having half of the diamond, which makes more of a triangle. So, a line here, a triangle up to the pelvic bone, and then back down. So this is more encompassing more the vaginal canal and the urethra. This is especially important if you are dealing with leakage, with sneezing or coughing or jumping. This is going to be more of a need for contraction, coordination, endurance, and strength at this part of the pelvic floor. This time, when you take your breath in, again, you're going to passively lengthen on the breath in, and then on the breath out, I want you to think about between the 2 labias kind of coming together, almost like you're squeezing together around that urethra. That's where you're focused on the contraction. So you might not feel it as much towards your tailbone or your bottom. You might feel it more towards the front of your pelvic floor. This helps you orientate and connect and contract to different parts of your pelvic floor, which can really help with specific issues that you might be dealing with, okay? So if you want to pause this video again, try 5 or so just towards the front part of the pelvic floor, thinking about that line at that vaginal canal, focusing more towards the urethra where you normally would pee, contracting and holding at that position. And remember, don't forget to fully release during each contraction and repetition, okay? Now let's go towards the back of the pelvic floor. Again, like I said previously, this is where actually a lot of women hold more tension, more guarding, more tightness towards the back portion. 1, probably because they're doing a bunch of kegels incorrectly. 2, just because we are, clenching our bottoms, or we're going through big transitions like pregnancy and postpartum where our body is shifting and there's postural changes that are happening. We're tucking our bottom, we're squeezing and we're clenching. This is where a lot of buildup of tension happens. So I actually like to focus not on the contraction as much back here, but more of the relaxation. So you can still do a gentle contraction on the exhale, but we're really focusing on the inhale and the release here. So when you take that breath in, think about your bottom, right? Allowing the expansion to happen. Think about the tailbone and these 2 sit bones actually coming further away from each other, right? So you're thinking about these 2 sit bones expanding and opening and creating more space towards the back part of the pelvic bowl on the inhale. So taking that breath in, starting to see an expansion, release, and opening in the back part of the pelvic bowl. This can especially be helpful too if you're preparing for birth, or if you're focusing on trying to downtrain, if you experience tailbone pain or hip pain, pain with intimacy, even leakage too, or heaviness symptoms can also be helpful here as well. So again, this is more of a focus for the release work on the inhale. If you want to work both directions, of course, as you exhale, you can do a gentle pickup, kind of focusing more on that anal sphincter area. All right, so this is one of the visual activities that we have our clients do. I wanted to share it with you today as well. Just pull it out of our proven 4-phase method. But if you're feeling like, holy smokes, I might need more support, I might need more guided help with this, we're obviously here anytime to be able to answer any questions that you have. Just feel free to reach out to us. You can book a free inquiry call to chat with us one-on-one if you need more one-on-one guided support with this, or feel free to always DM me a message over on Instagram at your postpartum PT if you want to chat a little bit more to see how we might be able to support you.